Discover the inspiring journey of a hidden slave carpenter who amazingly toppled a mansion roof. Ezekiel stood beneath the damp sheet of plywood that acted as his ceiling in a small workshop, the weight of the world hanging like the heavy humidity around him. At 25, he was a master of his craft, the swift strokes of his chisel giving life to the wood he shaped. Each piece spoke a silent story, a whisper of dreams untold, yet he remained shackled by the chains of slavery, his talent ignored and oppressed. Every day he saw grand homes pass by, symbols of a life he was not allowed to touch, homes built by the hands of men who looked down on him and those like him. Every day he saw grand homes pass by, symbols of a life he was not allowed to touch, homes built by the hands of men who looked down on him and those like him. Eldridge was a town thick with heat, both in temperature and tension. The dirt roads were layered with unspoken prejudices, with fault lines deep enough to swallow any hope. As Ezekiel molded wood into forms of grace and beauty, he felt an ache in his heart, an urgent desire to escape the shadows. He recalled the tales his mother shared of their ancestors, skilled artisans who forged empires from timber. Was it too much to hope for a different life? Each stroke of his tool was followed by that nagging question, echoing in his mind, "If only they could see me." The announcement of Mr. Hargrove's opulent mansion sent ripples through Ezekiel's world. He felt a stirring within, a flicker of hope to carve out a future not defined by the darkness of oppression. But that hope came with a heavy cost, the knowledge that pursuing it might cast him away from his home, the community that raised him. Would they understand? As he clandestinely worked on the mansion, the weight of secrecy pressed down upon him. The wooden beams filled with his dreams, yet fear tangled with his ambition. What if they discovered him? Would they see any worth in him beyond a body meant for labor? The memory of his mother's eyes, always fierce yet weary, pulled at him like a tether when he considered abandoning their struggles. Torn between loyalty to family and a longing for self-fulfillment, Ezekiel's nights grew restless, filled with spiraling thoughts of pride and trepidation. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As Ezekiel tightened the last bolt on the roof, a shiver traced his spine. Whispers of accidents among the workers festered in the air, each incident a reminder of the fragility of their existence. Sharp crack echoed, and his heart raced. What if this was all for nothing? Pressure bore down like the humidity outside, and doubt clouded his craftsmanship. Would his true talent ever be recognized, or would he be crushed under the weight of the very system that confined him? In a moment of clarity, he stumbled upon an old man, a mentor long thought lost, who spoke of a lineage forged by artisans. This revelation ignited a fierce determination in him, a call to arms against the oppression that sought to chain him. Just then, disaster struck. The roof collapsed with a deafening roar, the facade of wealth shattering around him. As dust swirled, Ezekiel stood at the precipice of a monumental choice. Would he rise amidst the ruins, fight for his vision, or be consumed in the chaos of a world that tried to keep him silent? The moment hung in the air, thick with potential, leaving him trembling at the brink of destiny, forever evolving in tension. As the dust settled around him, Ezekiel felt a pulsating energy surge through his body. Daring to breathe, he braved the enveloping smell of crushed wood in desperation. The mansion's once imposing structure now lay in disarray, mirroring the tumult within his own heart. He was at a crossroads, and the choice before him loomed larger than the debris surrounding him. His fingers, stained with sawdust and sweat, trembled as they traced the edges of the ruined roof. The collapse had been catastrophic, yet it had unraveled a thread of resilience he didn't know he possessed. A spark flickered in his mind. If he could summon enough courage to rise from this violence, perhaps he could reshape not only this wood, but his entire existence. Ezekiel recalled the old man's words with renewed clarity. "Artistry is born of struggle," he had said. Could he turn this disaster into an opportunity? As scattered beams of sunlight pierced through the wreckage, he was struck by a notion that felt both frightening and exhilarating. Maybe this was his moment to transform the event into a symbol, a message that his craftsmanship could rival any gilded masterpiece. He cast a cautious glance around to see if anyone had noticed the collapse. Should his secret be uncovered, the repercussions could be dire. But in this dangerous game played by the powerful, he had seen the flicker of acknowledgement in the few workers who dared to unionize their efforts. Wouldn't the evidence of his skill force them to recognize his worth, even if they couldn't acknowledge it? Fear mingled with resolve as he assessed the chaos. What if he used this moment, a narrative of defiance, to showcase the artistry he'd always known he possessed? He needed allies, faces that drew breath from collective suffering. Yet he couldn't shake the nagging dread of backlash. How could he convince others of a cause that seemed so frail in a land steeped in oppression? Instead of retreating into shadows, Ezekiel made a practical decision. He gathered what remained of the fallen roof, carefully salvaging usable materials while harboring hopes for reinvention. Each piece of wood that slipped through his fingers whispered stories of potential. Envisioning a new design, he sketched shapes in the dirt with a stick, breathing life into blueprints shaped by possibility rather than despair. With each carve and split of the wood, he experienced a fusion of labor and belief. The uncertainty of his future remained entangled in his mind, but a shift had taken root within him. Creative rebellion was both a tool and a weapon. The days blurred into nights as he worked tirelessly to transform the wreckage into something that could shock a community into reform, an unexpected artistry that could demand respect. Late one night, a newfound companion emerged. Samuel, a fellow worker, had watched from the shadows. His eyes sparkled with awe and a strange mix of trepidation. "What are you planning?" he whispered, unsure of Ezekiel's intentions. For the first time, doubt colored his admiration. Ezekiel paused, struck by the potential of their interaction. This was the moment to acknowledge the fear that lingered in both their hearts. "I'm planning a challenge," Ezekiel declared firmly, his heart racing. "I will show them our worth through the art we create. Will you join me?" Eyes locked, a silent agreement passed between them, an alliance forged in the fires of their shared struggle. As Ezekiel poured his soul into the reconstruction, doubts lingered just beneath the surface. He felt fear dance closely, challenging the resolve he was trying to cultivate. The night before the unveiling, uncertainty clawed at him. Would the world truly be ready to witness a hidden slave carpenter's rebellion against oppression? The towering shadows of error loomed large, but a flicker of defiance burned brighter still. For the first time, he understood his efforts transcended mere survival. They were about the recognition of his humanity. The moment approached, ready to unveil not just a structure, but a declaration of existence. Yet even as he prepared, a familiar echo clung to him. The threat of discovery loomed large, unresolved and heavy. The time that come to face not only the world, but the ghosts of his past, ready to demand respect in a place that had done everything to silence him. Would he succeed in crafting a new reality, or would he be crushed under the weight of awakening the slumbering tiger of resistance? As dawn began to break, painting the sky in fiery hues, Ezekiel found himself consumed by a maelstrom of emotions. The anticipation of revealing his creation merged with the overwhelming dread of potential failure. He stood amidst the debris, staring at what he had begun to shape from the very bones of the collapsed structure. It wasn't merely wood he had reclaimed, it was his identity, his very essence compressed into every cut and polish. He had transformed haphazard splinters into an elegant form, a chair that embodied grace and rebellion. As he admired the still tender curves of the seat, he realized that this was more than just a functional piece. It was an audacious statement, a rebuke against the degradation he had endured. Each stroke of his hands whispered truths of worth and dignity, and for the first time he felt emboldened by the raw potential that lay within both him and the materials. Yet, beneath the surface of this newfound fervor lay the gnawing anxiety of what was to unfold. What if the unveiling didn't resonate? The thought of mockery or indifference lanced through him like a shard of ice. The implication of failure felt like a heavy yoke, urging him to hesitate, to retreat back into the anonymity of labor and submission. In those moments, Samuel's presence by his side offered some solace. "Whatever happens out there," Samuel said softly, "you've already shown them what we are capable of." His eyes flickered with an intensity that reminded Ezekiel of the common thread of his struggle. Samuel's belief in their shared vision ignited something deep within Ezekiel, pushing him to embrace the fragility of hope. Drawing in a steadying breath, Ezekiel assigned each moment a purpose as he prepared for their first audience. Today wasn't just about delivering a carved table. It was a narrative of their existence, the trials, the labor, the art of survival, inscribed within each element of his creation. Ezekiel had taken the day to rehearse his words, yet the trembling in his voice revealed a different battle beneath the surface. Would his articulation carry the weight of his journey? Would the disbelief of the crowd undermine his artistry? An innate urge to rattle the proverbial cage surged within him. Perhaps he underestimated his power. Perhaps he had the potential to shift the very axis of their shared world. As their small gathering commenced, an array of wary eyes focused on Ezekiel and Samuel. Conversations barely hushed, camaraderie intertwined with skepticism. Murmurs cocooned him in doubt, a stark reminder of the barriers that surrounded them. Each glance felt like scrutiny, yet Ezekiel caught himself focusing not just on the eyes of the audience, but on his work, crafted from the ruins that had once threatened to encapsulate him into silence. In that charged atmosphere, he felt a shift. Artistry had summoned a strength that soared far above mundane expectations. With each word that formed on his lips, he shared not just the creation before them, but the spirit that had ignited within. "This wood speaks of life reclaimed," he declared, "of hands stitched back together by determination." As he observed their expressions change from suspicion to contemplation, a growing wave of exhilaration washed over him. The unsettling blend of fear and empowerment renewed his resolve. Was he not merely a carpenter? Had he not morphed into a voice heralding the enduring nature of humanity against the backdrop of oppression? Yet the admiration in the crowd simmered precariously. It could just as easily transform into the fury of rejection. Would they succumb to tradition, or would they begin to shift their perception? Before he could further contemplate the implications, a figure approached, one he recognized all too well, one who represented authority and scorn. The man stood there, expressions unreadable, a conflict brewing in the air around them. The moment hung like fragile glass, ready to shatter. In that instant, Ezekiel understood. The time had come to confront the very structures that sought to define him. What would he choose to do when faced with the unyielding reality? As the tension escalated, Ezekiel's next words could either bind or liberate him. Would he rise to the challenge, claiming his narrative, or retreat to the shadows he had fought so valiantly to escape? Ezekiel's heart raced as he locked eyes with the figure before him. Garrett, a man whose sharp tongue and disdainful sneer had become emblematic of every ceiling placed above him. Rising from the depths of doubt, Ezekiel gathered his thoughts, feeling the weight of both anticipation and trepidation swirling within. This encounter was not merely a confrontation, it was a reckoning. "Ezekiel." Garrett's voice cut through the tension like a knife, deliberate and menacing. "You think this trinket will persuade anyone to see you as more than you are? Just a laborer, a ghost behind hammers and nails." In that moment, the crowd leaned in, their collective breath held, drawn to the magnetic pull of confrontation. Rather than diminish under the assault, Ezekiel felt something stir, a challenge rising from the depths of his conviction. "It is not just a trinket," he countered, voice firm. "It reflects a journey, a reclamation of dignity." Ezekiel's words were emboldened by the memories of sweat-soaked nights spent laboring, the tentative sketches that morphed into this chair, a potent symbol of resilience. He inhaled deeply, grounding himself in the truth he had crafted, one piece at a time. It speaks of our stories, of redemption from the brokenness that sought to define us. The murmurs around him shifted, tantalizingly uncertain. Ezekiel owned the moment. This was not just a defense, it was an embrace of his rightful identity. He stepped toward Garrett, the distance between them collapsing into an intimate space of challenge and defiance. "You see a laborer, I see a creator. I see potential for all of us." Garrett's brow furrowed, eyes narrowing in disbelief, but the ripple of murmurs indicated a change in momentum. The audience, previously caught in passive skepticism, now whispered just above inaudibly. Perhaps Ezekiel's audacity had infected their minds, igniting dormant aspirations. But Garrett did not yield. "This is merely fanciful rhetoric, Ezekiel. What does your chair mean in a world that continues to bow to the wealthy, the influential?" His derision was palpable, a deliberate provocation. Ezekiel's pulse quickened. Garrett's words were intended to draw him back into the shadows, the very place he'd fought to leave behind. Battling against that impulse, Ezekiel pressed deeper, confronting not only Garrett, but the insidious ideas that had tied him in knots for all those years. "What does it mean?" "Everything. It means that creation can emerge from destruction, that we can redefine our existence one piece of wood at a time, inching towards something greater." The crowd stirred. He could sense their hearts swaying, caught in the tension of this unfolding testament. The flicker of awareness lit up faces around him. Their expressions were a tapestry of curiosity and unexpected understanding. "Are you afraid of what may happen if we rise to redefine ourselves? Fear is a cage, Garrett. A world healed through art and craftsmanship is worth fighting for." Silence enveloped them, a charged moment where finders of hope mingled with skeptics craving familiarity. Garrett remained stoic as the weight of Ezekiel's words settled. Yet in this palpable silence, an internal echo reverberated through Ezekiel's own psyche. He was challenging more than the man. He was challenging all fear-laden narratives that attempted to bind him. Then Samuel took a step forward, voice robust and grounded. "Everyone should be free to share their story, to witness their reflection in creation, even a chair." The ripple of Samuel's support reignited Ezekiel's strength. In that arena of vulnerable revelations, he demanded the authority that had long been wrested from him. It was time to step firmly into the light, unfurling the narrative he'd claimed from the ashes. Yet, as his proposal hung in the air, a familiar dread whispered at the edges of his mind. Was this enough? The looming question of how the crowd would respond, or whether their thoughts would linger on Garrett's disdain, loomed ominously. Before he could ponder further, he caught sight of a woman in the crowd whose gaze had sharpened with insight. She stepped forward, ready to speak. The very tension caused by Garrett's presence felt overlaid, shifting the focus onto her, a pivot that could either fortify Ezekiel's newfound audacity or cast it into doubt. Ezekiel braced himself, heart pounding, as the fabric of his reclaiming began to fray at the edges. What would she reveal, and how would it weave into the tapestry of his story? Would this be the spark of solidarity he sought, or would it unravel his bravely proclaimed narrative? The woman stood resolute, her expression a mix of determination and vulnerability. Her voice cleared, gaining momentum in the charged atmosphere. "I've seen your work, Ezekiel. I've felt the craftsmanship in each piece you create. You've transformed pain into something beautiful, and that is more than what many can achieve." Ezekiel's heart leapt. This was the affirmation he craved, a substantiation of his efforts that had been so easily dismissed by Garrett. Yet that spark of hope was immediately shrouded by self-doubt. Surely she was only one voice in a crowd likely still tethered to old ideals. "But he hesitated, caught in the web of Garrett's narrative of inadequacy. "Just?" The woman interrupted, but her tone was filled with warmth and purpose. "The world is full of justs, but what you've done is carve out a place for truth to flourish. It doesn't matter if some refuse to see it. What matters is that you keep creating and keep pushing against the just." Ezekiel felt the fissures in his conviction start to heal. Her words were a balm, anchoring him despite the lingering shadows of doubt. Yet Garrett's sneer echoed in the back of his mind. "You understand what I face, but you don't know what it's like when your work is deemed worthless by those in power." The woman took a step closer, the crowd parting for her movement, her passion carving a path through the uncertainty. "You strike at the heart of what art truly is, Ezekiel. When was it ever about the approval of those who can't see beyond their privilege? Your work inspires, it speaks to the struggles of many. That is power." He swallowed hard, his pulse racing. Was this what he had overlooked? The undeniable ability of art to resonate with emotion far beyond transaction? His chair wasn't merely a product. It embodied resilience and collective struggles, a reflection of stories worth telling. As the crowd buzzed with murmurs of agreement, Ezekiel felt a shift within himself. Questions of worth plagued him, but this moment brought clarity. The value of creation lies not in recognition, but in its impact. "You believe this can change narratives?" he asked, a tremor of hope threading through his words. "Absolutely," she replied fiercely. "You have the talent to reach people who feel unheard. This chair can be an entire discourse on craft, struggle, and identity. Don't shrink from the possibility. Instead, embrace it." The energy of the crowd swelled, a tide of murmurs cascading over Ezekiel, igniting a sense of responsibility. He was not just a laborer, he was an artist, a storyteller. He had the power to reshape perceptions, to illuminate the struggle that so many shared. What more could he create? What stories lay dormant within the wood, waiting for him to set them free? Garrett's continued presence loomed in stark contrast to the warmth offered by the woman, highlighting the choices before him. Engage in conflict or further define his path as a creator? Ezekiel chose the latter. "I refuse to stand in the shadow of someone who fears the power of narratives," he declared, the fire igniting in his chest again. "And I shall build a stage for our stories, not just with wood, but through every piece I craft moving forward." The crowd erupted in a chorus of encouragement, but Ezekiel was already spiraling deeper into contemplation, connecting threads of possibility that had once eluded him. Suddenly, the perspective shifted as a realization permeated his focus. His confrontation with Garrett was not just external. What remained unresolved within him? A sense of identity lingered like a shadow, a question yet to be asked. Was he capable of weaving this newfound clarity into the future he had envisioned? The potential felt as daunting as it was exhilarating. As the crowd encircled Ezekiel with their acknowledgement, the next challenge unfurled just beyond the horizon. The essence of creating was calling for more than mere survival. It beckoned him to uncover deep-seated desires and explore pathways he had hushed for so long. "Ezekiel," a voice called from behind, breaking his reverie. It was Samuel, re-entering the scene. "There's something you need to see." Intrigued and apprehensive, Ezekiel felt the weight of anticipation surge. What awaited him now, and how would it shape the burgeoning creator he was determined to become? Ezekiel turned to Samuel, the urgency in his friend's voice compelling. "What is it? What do you want me to see?" His heart raced with curiosity, a new energy igniting his thoughts. The affirmation from the woman still reverberated through his mind, intertwining with the uncertainty that had plagued him for so long. Samuel gestured him toward the back of the gallery, navigating through the bustling crowd. The atmosphere pulsed with anticipation and creativity, and Ezekiel found himself absorbing the vibrant energy. Each step felt deliberate, his feet finding a purpose he had doubted just moments earlier. As they reached a secluded area, Samuel stopped, excitement lighting up his features. "Look at this." He revealed a handcrafted table adorned with intricate detailing, a tapestry of grain and shadow. Ezekiel's breath hitched. This wasn't just furniture, it was an embodiment of a narrative, a story meticulously carved into each panel. "Who made this?" Ezekiel asked, his voice barely a whisper as he reached out to trace the delicate lines of the wood. Samuel's gaze shifted, becoming serious. "Someone who faced rejection, who turned to their craft when the world seemed to shut them out, just like you." The words clung to him like a lifeline. Ezekiel looked closer. In the negative spaces and lines of the carving, he could see the struggles and triumphs reflected, the resilience of a creator who had poured all they had into their work, just as he had tried to do. It suddenly dawned on him that he could channel his own experiences into his creations, that his journey could resonate through others if he only allowed it to. "I can't be this good, Samuel. I'm just trying to be what everyone else wants me to be," he admitted, the vulnerability echoing in the quiet that followed his confession. "Do you really think that's what people want?" Samuel challenged gently. "Or are you just imagining the expectations they've placed on you? Your history, your perspective, those are your strengths. That chair you've crafted is a testament to that. You're not just anything, Ezekiel. You're a creator." The affirmation struck deeply. The intensity of his dreams felt potent yet terrifying. It was time to examine the hidden layers of his own identity. What had he suppressed in order to fit into predefined molds? He had pushed aside the raw narratives of his own existence, and in doing so had risked losing his artistic spirit. Suddenly, with clarity, Ezekiel felt the foundation of his resolve be restored. Art had never been merely about aesthetics. It was an avenue for self-exploration, for truth. His work could symbolize not just experiences, but transform the way people perceive their own narratives. "Ezekiel, the woman earlier, she's right. There's power in the unfiltered," Samuel continued, his excitement palpable. "Imagine blending those layers, the rawness of your identity with your craftsmanship. What could come from that?" The prospect ignited something within him, a flicker of determination nudging against the fear that had silenced him for too long. But what if they reject it? What if Garrett dismisses it all again? "Then you show them more. You break through the fear of rejection," Samuel replied firmly. "You take those stories, your stories, and create something timeless, something that demands recognition." Ezekiel clenched his fists as he felt the resolve deepen. He could no longer allow fear to dictate his creativity. The confrontation with Garrett loomed on the horizon. If he wanted to redefine his path as a creator, he would need to fully embrace himself, the narratives he had buried, all the intricacies he had kept hidden. "Let's do it. Let's go back. I need to show them what I can do, what I can be," he stated, an unshakable conviction solidifying within. Good, Samuel smiled. Now we just need to prepare you for the confrontation. It's time to unmask the creator that's been waiting. Ezekiel felt the walls of doubt start to fall, but in their place, a new tension crept in. Would he be ready for the challenge that lay ahead? As they turned to head back into the crowd, a question lingered on the edge of his thoughts. How would he face Garrett and secure his narrative in a landscape that had yet to recognize his worth? Ezekiel's mind raced as they moved through the thick chatter of the gallery, the anticipation building within him, not only for the recognition he craved, but for the journey he now had to embrace. With every step, he felt the raw challenges he had once feared transform into a burgeoning curiosity about his own potential. The idea of unveiling a deeper layer of himself flickered like a candle in the dark, flickering between doubt and hope. "Samuel," he began, forcing the words out amidst the clamor, "what if I'm not ready for this?" "Readiness is a myth," Samuel countered, a smile gracing his lips as they navigated back toward the main area. "We often think we're only as good as the last piece we displayed. But it's time to realize your evolution doesn't hinge on that alone. Every creation, every rejection, it's all part of the same story." Ezekiel absorbed those words as if they were the essence of his journey. The notion of evolution resonated within. He was more than the sum of his failures. In fact, it was those very failures that had forged his understanding of craftsmanship. Fueled by Samuel's unwavering belief, he allowed himself the possibility of embracing vulnerability. Each chop of wood, cut, and polish had been experiences laden with lessons, a raw narrative waiting to be told. A gdy approachał small gathering of artistów, a spotlight illuminating their discussion of style and technique, an unexpected wave of anxiety surged in Ezekiel. Here were his peers, people whose talents had been recognized and cultivated, while he felt like a mere shadow in the background. This gathering of intellect and creativity churned in his stomach, his insecurities rising to the forefront. "What if I don't resonate with them?" Ezekiel whispered, regaining his breath as he glanced at the vibrant personas around him. "Let them dictate their paths. Yours is unique. Remember the table, the story it embodies. You're capable of crafting a narrative that's undeniably yours. Speak with your distinct voice," Samuel encouraged, gently nudging him forward. Ezekiel closed his eyes for a moment, envisioning the delicate interplay of wood and form that had inspired him earlier. He could wield this imagination even amid the tumult of uncertainty. Opening his eyes, he felt different, a sense of clarity emerging through the fear. He had stories, scars, and the momentum of creation behind him. Those were tools in his arsenal. Taking a deep breath and straightening his posture, he stepped closer to the nearest group. Their conversation shifted to sustainability in their crafts, an idea that invigorated Ezekiel. He opened his mouth, but hesitated, his previous hesitation creeping back. "Just speak," Samuel urged softly from beside him, his unwavering presence providing strength. And so he did. Tentatively at first, his voice steadied by a belief in the narrative he had been grappling to embody. He spoke about woodworking techniques that honored the material, intertwining it with his own motivations for choosing certain styles. He shared his vision of sustainability, explaining how each piece could reflect personal stories, much like the table that had sparked his awakening. Gradually, the atmosphere shifted, eyes turned toward him, and what initially felt like a cacophony of opinions transformed into an engagement of interest. Ezekiel began to see glimpses of respect mirroring back at him, echoing his own budding recognition of self. With each word, he carved through the layers of misunderstanding he had placed upon himself, facing the moment that had once paralyzed him with fear. But just as the conversation began to flow smoothly, a shadow fell over them as Garrett emerged from the crowd, an unmistakable aura of authority trailing behind him. Ezekiel's heartbeat quickened now, the confidence he had started to build teetering dangerously as he caught sight of his former critic. Could he maintain this momentum, or would Garrett's presence snap him back into the confines of self-doubt? The confrontation had begun, loomed like a storm on the horizon, a critical test of all he had uncovered within himself. Would the recognition he had sought from others drown under the weight of Garrett's gaze, or was he prepared to stand true to the creator he was evolving into? Ezekiel steadied his breath as he turned to face Garrett, the critical
moment present. He had to decide. Would he stand and challenge the doubts that had encumbered him for too long, or withdraw into silence? Ezekiel's heart thrummed in his chest, the pulse of anxiety intertwining with anticipation as he braced for Garrett's approach. The air around him thickened, and every word Samuel had shared felt laden with expectation. He could feel the eyes of the gathered artists on him, an assembly of peers who had, moments ago, looked upon him with intrigue, but now awaited the unfolding of a confrontation that promised to peel back layers of pretense. Garrett stepped forward, a faint smirk painting his lips. "Ezekiel," he began, his voice smooth but heavy with condescension, "it's intriguing to see you here. I never expected you to engage so openly in a discussion about craftsmanship." There was a calculated edge to his words, sharpened with the intention to provoke. Ezekiel clenched his jaw, the taunt igniting a fire within him. He had been invisible for far too long, slinking through the shadows of self-doubt and misperception. As he met Garrett's gaze, a small but potent wave of confidence surged beneath the surface. He thought of the table, the many hours spent working through splinters and grains, through failures and small victories. Each joint was symbolic of his painstaking journey, a story in creation that owned its imperfections. "I've been learning," Ezekiel replied, infusing his voice with newfound strength. "Learning to embrace not only what I create, but also what I have to say about it." Garrett's smirk faltered as he registered the shift. This wasn't just a moment of defense. This was Ezekiel seizing the narrative, reclaiming the space that had felt dominated by others for far too long. "What is a story, if not a reflection of our struggles and triumphs?" Ezekiel pressed on, emboldened. "I'm evolving, as we all are. Instead of focusing on who I've been, I'm more invested in who I can become and what impact I can leave on this craft." The words poured out of him, now backed by the passion that had found its way through the cracks of uncertainty. He began to see nods of encouragement from those around him, their initial skepticism melting away. It wasn't just about the art, it was about the creator standing resolutely behind it. Garrett glanced around, the shift of dynamics palpable. "So you think you can hold your own against seasoned craftsmen?" he challenged, though the tone felt less assertive, edging toward defensiveness. With every question, every doubt Garrett cast, Ezekiel held firm. "I'm not here to compete with anyone but myself. Each piece I create is a testament to my journey, crafted with intention and care. The question is, are you prepared to accept that everyone has a voice worth listening to, even if it sounds different from your own?" Garrett's bravado cracked momentarily, revealing the insecurity he often turned outward against others. Ezekiel recognized this fragility, and it fueled his resolve. He felt the substance of his words wrap around them, connecting him with those who stood in support. He wasn't alone. But just as he relished this unexpected triumph, Garrett straightened, a calculating glint returning to his eyes. "A rookie's confidence doesn't shield one from reality, Ezekiel. You're playing in deeper waters than you realize. Are you sure this is where you want to be?" The question lingered like a dark cloud after a storm, and Ezekiel felt it tug at the corners of his conviction.
Was he ready to withstand the storms, both inside and out? With the gaze of artists and critics alike fixed on him, he understood this was a pivotal moment. He had asserted himself, but would he maintain that conviction, or would the undercurrents of self-doubt pull him back? The pressure began to weigh on his resolve, and in that split second, as Garrett's smile hardened, Ezekiel faced the truth laid bare. Growth was not merely about rising, it also meant learning to navigate the setbacks that could, at any moment, threaten to undermine his newfound clarity. And with that realization, he prepared to deepen his stand, recognizing that the battle was not just external, but an intrinsic clash within him. Would he forge ahead, embracing the potential of his craft, or retreat back to obscurity, where the battles of the past lingered? Ezekiel's mind raced, thoughts colliding like errant pieces of wood strewn about his workshop. As Gary's words hung in the air, they morphed into the sound of sharp chisels scraping against wood, a reminder of every struggle he faced in crafting his identity alongside his art. Stepping back from the confrontation took form in the back of his mind, but now instead, clarity emerged. He would not retreat. He straightened, grounding himself in the notion that he was more than his past, more than the timid figure he had once feared represented him. The reflections of self-doubt that mirrored back at him were no longer stifling. They were symbols of the battles he had fought, proof of resilience forged over time. The crowd, despite its prior skepticism, had shifted. They were now waiting, holding their collective breath. "Garrett," Ezekiel began, his voice steady, "you assume my journey holds no substance, that my craftsmanship originates, but you can't silence the ambition to evolve." With each word, he felt the weight of his purpose solidifying. Garrett's expression contorted slightly, revealing a flicker of annoyance behind his facade. "Evolving includes knowing your place, planning your next move cautiously, not impulsively stepping into a scene you don't fully understand," he rebutted, but his voice lacked the earlier confidence. "But that's where you are wrong," Ezekiel responded, feeling an energy surge within him. "Evolution comes from daring to fail, daring to experiment, to build upon the foundations laid before you. If I stand still, I become stagnant. I've chosen to engage, to challenge this space, and that holds an essence far more profound than mere imitation." As the words flowed, Ezekiel could see the crowd shifting again, sensing a subtle build in their anticipation. Confrontation had energized him, morphing the adrenaline into a catalyst for growth. The blend of artistry and emotional authenticity resonated, but the most critical aspect was yet to reveal itself. Garrett cleared his throat, unable to push back with the same vigor as before. "You seem to have riled up quite a crowd, but it won't last when reality checks come crashing down," he muttered, though the edge was dulled. Ezekiel nodded, acknowledging Garrett's attempt to belittle him, but he felt different, more competent, less willing to let a few words define him. "Reality is what we choose to make of it, Garrett. I'm not waiting for validation from masters, nor will I lock myself in a box, afraid of daring to claim my voice." Suddenly, Samuel stepped forward, joining the unfolding discourse. Ezekiel's perspective doesn't disregard the history of craftsmanship, it builds upon it. Opening a dialogue fosters innovation. His words punctuated the tension, drawing support from the audience. Ezekiel felt a rush of gratitude. Samuel's backing solidified his wavering confidence, a reminder that the journey of growth could intertwine with guidance from those willing to see potential. Garrett, facing resistance from both Ezekiel and Samuel, waved a dismissive hand. "Fine, but remember that playing with fire invites burns." With that, he turned to retreat, diminishing his influence as he walked away. But Ezekiel felt the remnants of that confrontation hanging in the air, suspended like a challenge yet again left unanswered. Ezekiel stood among the crowd,
his earlier anxiety being replaced with resolve. Yet doubt slithered at the edges of his mind. Had he truly overcome Garrett's challenge, or would this reflection resurface when he least expected it? A lighter moment seeped into the atmosphere. Laughter replaced tension like a bomb. Yet the exchange had unfurled something deeper within him, a flicker of an awareness of his own evolving principles. The space felt electric as the conversations around him intertwined his bravery with their stories, their journeys. But as Ezekiel considered this newfound resilience, he realized he needed more than just this triumph. He needed to fortify the skills that embraced both vulnerability and strength within his artistry, shaping them into a purposeful foundation that could withstand scrutiny and celebrate individuality. What other challenges lay ahead? Ezekiel sensed this was just the beginning. Thoughts of ideas and apologies mingled in his mind as he prepared to step back into his creative realm. There lay within him a burgeoning project, an expansive canvas that beckoned him to explore uncharted territory. He imagined it, a behind-the-scenes look at his craft, not just the beauty, but the nature of struggle intertwined with creation. His heart surged, ignited by an ambition unsatisfied, eager to move beyond mere acceptance and towards undeniable mastery. What had begun as a confrontation could evolve into something remarkable if he embraced it wholly. And just then, a voice echoed within. It was the moment to decide. Would he pursue the understanding of his craft with unwavering courage, or would he risk returning to the chains of doubt that had once bound him? The choice loomed ahead, and as the laughter of the crowd buzzed around him, Ezekiel's path to begin rather than retreat lay barriers wide open, ready to be explored. Ezekiel stood in the midst of the gallery, a swelling confidence coursing through him. The tension of the earlier confrontation with Garrett had morphed into a newfound determination, illuminating a truth he could no longer ignore. He was capable of crafting not only wood, but also narratives that deserved to be shared. Today he would finally step into his role as a creator, as an artist. The supportive murmurs from his peers echoed in his mind, reverberating like a warm echo of affirmation. Ezekiel thought of the chair he had built, transcending mere furniture to stand as a testament to his struggles and triumphs. This moment wasn't merely about one piece of work anymore. It was a foretelling of a legacy he could forge. With Samuel by his side, he approached a blank canvas, a piece of reclaimed wood larger than any he had previously worked with, a perfect backdrop for his next dive into artistry. A whisper of potential flickered in his spirit as he considered the journey he had embarked upon, acknowledging how far he had come from the confines of his workshop into this open space of revelation. As the sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the grain of the wood, Ezekiel grasped the tools that had once merely served him in labor, now transforming into instruments of expression. This, he declared loudly enough for all to hear, is going to be my best work yet. He could feel the weight of anticipation in the air, a palpable sense of shared investment amongst those who had witnessed his progression. The act of carving became dance-like, the rhythm of his hands against the wood a symphony of intention. Each cut represented a story, a shred of emotion woven into the very fibers of the material. He felt free. He felt confirmed. As the initial strokes took shape, he began to craft not just another piece of furniture, but a visual narrative interlaced with creation. He infused every inch of the wood with his experience, his history. The struggles that had once felt suffocating now blossomed into a cathartic release. Hours swiftly passed, the air thick with concentration and camaraderie, as onlookers began to draw closer, their whispers shifting from skepticism to genuine intrigue. "What do you see?" he invited them, his back still to the gathering. "What stories does this wood tell you?" Their interpretations flowed like water, infusing Ezekiel with positive energy. Little by little, he realized that the essence of his work lay not only in the understanding he had of the craft, but in its connection to the collective resonance of those around him. In every carved line, he was not just speaking his truth, but channeling their stories, a shared experience of resilience. With each improvement on the wood, he caught glimpses of who he was becoming. Where he had once felt invisible and unrecognized, he now found himself standing proudly before witnesses, carrying something of weight, a voice molded from pain, exuberance, and ultimately artistry. Finally, as the last stroke fell into place, he stepped back to admire his creation, a stunning mantelpiece that embodied grace, strength, and an unwavering reflection of overcoming adversity. It was a monumental blend of artistry and storytelling, a crowning achievement. The crowd erupted into applause, their faces a tapestry of admiration, and Ezekiel felt a tidal wave of validation coursing through him. This was exactly what he had hoped for, the manifestation of a dream born from despair. He wasn't merely a laborer anymore. He had risen to claim his identity as an artist. In that moment, he grasped something unequivocally profound. Creativity could indeed serve as a powerful vessel, not just for acknowledgement of his journey, but as a medium to inspire others to recognize their own potential. As the room filled with chatter and praise, Ezekiel found himself overtaken by a sense of fulfillment he had long thought unattainable. As he stood there, surrounded by warmth and recognition, he realized this metamorphosis had come due to a deeper understanding of himself and a willingness to embrace vulnerability. Each gaze was a reminder that art has the power to cultivate change, to speak where silence once reigned. Satisfied, he made his way to the forefront of the gathering, locking eyes with Samuel, who beamed with pride. "This is just the beginning," Samuel asserted, his voice rich with understanding. "You've conquered not just a piece of wood, but the very barriers that sought to confine you." "It's time," Ezekiel replied, a newfound assurance filling his voice. "Time to unite not just my story, but to inspire a community to keep crafting their own destinies. Together, we can continue to create dialogues that transcend our fears." And so began Ezekiel's next chapter, one where he would continue to harness his artistry to empower and elevate not just himself, but countless others who felt voiceless and unseen. He had discovered the depths of his craft, the importance of embodying one's story in the work, and ultimately the capacity of art to chip away at the old narratives that held them back. The applause faded, yet his resolve was unwavering. Ezekiel knew he was on a path of continual growth, a journey shaped by both resilience and brilliance. He had emerged, unshackled, ready to craft not merely for survival, but for legacy. Now was the moment for all to witness the transformation and for him to share it widely in every crafted piece that burgeoned from that day forward. You need to subscribe now to ensure you never miss another exclusive emotional journey like this one. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us continue to create inspiring content. Comment your reactions and theories about Ezekiel's journey and what it ignites within you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful conclusion.